welcome again to Dark Hour. This is part 3 of our behind the scenes look, and I'm standing right now in the makeup room, and this is where we keep all of our masks. And if you watched the last video, I showed you the mold room, which is where we make masks, but everything that you're seeing right now was pretty much made here. I think there is less than 20 masks in this room that we bought from various vendors. The majority of these were all sculpted and molded and made right here at Dark Hour, which is a very cool thing to be able to do. Sometimes we'll make some masks for a show that we need, and we'll run the show, and then after the show is over, we can sell those masks to another haunt, and then they have some cool masks that you can't get out there in the wild. So that's kind of a neat circle of life thing that we can do. This is one of our makeup stations set up for airbrush. Just like everything else, it's plumbed in. We have air everywhere. Most of our makeup is airbrush because it's sanitary and it's fast and it's easy. We can do the show. We've done shows of as few as 25 actors, and we had 2 makeup artists on those kind of shows. And then during the busier time of the year, Halloween, we'll have upwards of 80 actors, and we may have 6 or 8 makeup artists where someone is just blacking out eyes, and someone is gluing on prosthetics, and someone is painting prosthetics. So the key is to keep it very efficient because you got to get actors in and actors out. On average, you may have 60 or 80 actors, and you have 2 hours to get all of them ready for the show. The difference between what we do here and what you see on shows like Face Off is that they have a long time to prepare to do one really extravagant makeup, and it's going to be seen on camera just like you're seeing me right now. And there's total control over where the camera goes and the lighting and the angles and all that. Inside a haunted house, it's not like that. It's quick and to the point. So we just need to know that these actors look good for their scare and where they're going to be able to retreat and the environment that they're in. And again, there's the timing issue. Trying to do 60 or more people in just a couple of hours is a lot different than the way they do it in Hollywood. So these are all factors that have to come into play way ahead of time when we're setting up how we're going to operate this part of the show. What's behind door number 2? If you've wondered, there's nothing exciting. It's just a dressing room with a bench and a hook and a mirror, just like any other department store. The difference is we're not a department store, we're a haunted house. I didn't think this was exciting until I was doing a tour one time, and someone from another haunt stopped me and said, "What are these?" And I said, "Dressing rooms." And they were like, "Can I see?" And I said, "Okay." And then they said, "Can I take a picture?" And I said, "Okay." And then it hit me. Coming from some of the haunts I've worked at before, you know, dressing rooms are not always a luxury. You may be getting dressed in the back of your car or like in the woods in the dark, or maybe even a porta potty. So when Lucy was putting together Dark Hour, said make sure that we have dressing rooms. So in daily life, it's something that we take for granted. In a haunted house, actors appreciate this stuff. There are so many costumes! Everybody say hi, John. Hey, how's it going? He was enjoying some hand sanitizer. John hates being on camera, but I told you I was going to put John on, and it's a threat. Yeah. All right, so we're standing in costuming. This is probably, if not the largest single department headquarters in the building. Tons and tons of costume work in here. Just like the mask, most of this is made right here. The costuming team will often go to fabric stores and get specialty prints, and they'll start and they'll build stuff out of that. Or maybe something comes from a thrift store and then they customize it, cut it up, add stuff to it, take stuff away from it. And then sometimes just straight up fabricate stuff. Gingerbread man, dragon wings, chupacabra bodies back there on the pedestal. All of that stuff is fabricated right here by the costuming team using all kinds of materials like latex or EVA foam, whatever they can get their hands on to get the job done. But the crew that works back here is always working around the clock to make new costumes and new monsters for a show. I work in tech stuff with Andy at the front of the building, and we hardly ever see what goes on back here. Rehearsal night rolls around, and I see all these cool looking monsters and stuff, and everybody looks amazing. I'm like, wow, this looks badass. When did this happen? And they're like, well, this is what we've been working on. And likewise, they walk through the haunt. Like, when did we build that? When did we add this? Like, well, that's what we've been working on. So despite being a small business and kind of we're all in the same building, we don't always see exactly what the end product is until it's that's out there. And you get to see when all the elements come together, which actually makes everything look better because all the different parts support the whole. This is our green room and actor meeting area. Nothing super special. We have our lockers, we have tables for our actors, microwave, refrigerator for their snacks and stuff. But this room is full of artwork. Every year, after every Halloween season, we have the cast autograph a poster. So those are in here. And then there's just some other marketing materials that we've done in the past, big character photos and stuff. Okay, now that we have had a look at all the things that happen backstage, I'm going to show you just a tiny little sneak peek of some of the places inside the show. I can't show you the entire show, but I'm going to show you a couple little tidbits inside the haunt itself. Right now, I'm up high in our graveyard, which makes up about 1/4 of the show overall. And over here behind me, you can see the facade of Coven Manor, which is another section of the show. Guests start off here and they wind around the graveyard, then they go into the manor, and then inside the manor house is a whole nother section. And I am standing on top of one of our mausoleums right now that customers walk through, and they actually come out that door right there from the queue line and start their journey. The tricky part about the graveyard is that we want it to be one big scene. We want it to feel like this is all an exterior outside scene, but we had to break it up into miniature scenes so that guests were chopped up and not all running together, and each area in the graveyard kind of maintained its own scare factor. So you can see from up high where I am how there's smaller pieces like mausoleums and breakaway walls that we use to kind of break up the walk through this overall open space that is the graveyard. You saw it from above just a second ago, and now here's the guest's point of view from that same area. And right there, as soon as they turn into the graveyard, you have this great reveal with layers of scenery, so that you see the angel statue and these zombie guys and this broken away wall, and then in the distance you can see over that, and you can see the clock tower, and you can see the manor house. And so we kind of layered it like that, so you get that full aspect, and yet you don't know what's going on the other side of that wall. That's a scene in of itself. These are two graveyard pieces I want to point out. These doors right here, you notice, are like a pale blue, and then this whole crypt, this whole walk-through mausoleum behind me is a bright green. Everything else in here is more of a natural gray. And the reason we did this is what I've mentioned earlier, and if you've watched any of my lighting videos, is you got to know what it looks like in show light. What it looks like right now doesn't matter. Customers don't see it right now. It's got to look good in show light. And so we experimented with brighter colors on these two when we were making them. And in the dark, under colored show lights and stuff, in the dim light, all these features pop really nice, and they look more natural than they do right now. We have learned that really fine gray on gray texture like this looks great, and it looks natural right now in bright light, but in the dark, this is too subtle. This fades away. In the dark, bright contrast like this, the bright green with the big bold lines in it, the dark lines, this is the kind of stuff that looks good in the dark. And of course, what you're doing with lighting always can affect it, but by and large, no matter what color of lighting or style of lighting, it's dimmer, it's darker, this type of stuff looks good. Right now we're going to go inside the animal crypt. We built this crypt to kind of be a shrine to animals, so we added all these little animal mementos in here, like this bat, and right up here you've got the rat in the wall, rat body, spider body, mummified cat, another stone cat, and a raven, and a frog, and one more rat over here. And so this little area just kind of pays nod to the animals. Witches had animals, and a lot of this tied into an original story of witches. So these were lost animals from the witches. I mentioned on one of the previous segments that we're not really big on black walls and black wall panels and things like that. We want there to be scenery. So kind of a cheat that we use on some places, if you look right over here behind me, you have, you know, these two separate walls and this tree right here. And behind the tree, it is just plain black. There's nothing going on back there. That is actually a curtain just right onto the other side of the graveyard. And that is, that makes really quick access for an actor so that actors can cut back and forth. But the secret is this tree in front of it. In the dark, the black obviously absorbs light so you don't notice it, but the tree reflects the light, and so that's what you pay attention to. It's also in the foreground, so it's what you're more likely to notice. So the fact that we did kind of black that out back there, same reason we black out everything, we don't want you to pay attention to it. On the subject of blacking things out, you can see that we have opted to paint our ceilings black and our surrounding walls black that's not scenery. And we do that because we want you to focus on the scenery. Being that this is the graveyard and we want you to think that you're outside even though that you're not, we took advantage of that. We hide these big theatrical spotlights up in the ceiling, these Source 4s. And all of these have gobos that look like moonlight coming down through the trees, and they're all focused on prominent points of scenery. If it's an animatronic or another scare point where an actor may pop out, that's where those lights are focused. And so it doesn't look like there's a spotlight on it. It just looks like natural lighting coming through the trees, and it draws your attention there. It also makes it feel like there's moonlight coming from overhead and there's foliage overhead. And you can see that we have sprinkled some camo net and other up high foliage to kind of help sell that illusion, but it really brings it to life in the dark. This is something cool that we did. Right here behind me, you've got these 4 skeleton pallbearers that are holding this, this casket overhead. And this is actually an effect. The casket rattles and shakes and it kind of creates a startle scare. And we had these since we opened. This was a really old animation that we had. And you just walk by it and the casket rattled. And we saw a haunted house, and you walk through the scene with like the jazz funeral, and there were pallbearers carrying a coffin, and you had to walk under it. And we thought that was a pretty cool idea. So we came back and we removed these guys. They used to be somewhere else, but we moved them over here and we added these bases so that now the customers do exactly that. You see them carrying the coffin and then you have to walk under it. Right now I'm standing inside our cave that we built a couple years ago. So this is the roof of the cave, and all of this stonework is done with foam. The spikes coming down through the ceiling are pieces of wood that we added to the frame, but that frame is actually a geodesic dome built out of wood, and then canvas was attached to it, and foam insulation was blown onto the canvas in the rock shape, and then it was all painted. And down here on the floor, we have these big rock formations. You see the big, bold black lines in the rock, like I mentioned in the graveyard earlier. Big, bold lines. They look weird now, but they look a lot better in show light. And yeah, we added these big rock pieces in here to kind of maze it out. But we built it on an open floor concept. So the cave itself is actually a pretty wide open space. And this piece here and this piece here are mobile, so they can come out or they can change direction. And so with that, we can change the path up in here a little bit. And no matter what we do, it's all under this nice big, we call it the Thunderdome cave. And we got sprinklers. We added a ceiling, so we had to put in sprinklers. And we have our security cameras and our fire alarm. Got to keep stuff safe. And this is the outside of the cave. This is a geodesic dome kit that we found somewhere online, I think. Guy that sold kits. And the kits just came with these PVC joints and instructions. And on the underside there, you can see it. There's a plate that goes on the inside, and then the ring that goes between all the boards. And there's instructions that say here's the length of board you need if you want your dome to be this big or this big or this big. So we opted to do 20 feet around, and it's 12 feet high in the center, and then we have it sitting on top of 8-foot wall panels. So yeah, the center of it inside is 20 feet high. See, we got our sprinklers going in there. It is sprinkled, it's safe. And you're looking at this from our swamp scene, and the way guests pass through the scene is they come out that portal right there and they walk towards where I'm standing. And so this is in the shadows behind them. They never look up and see it. Nobody ever notices that. This is our greenhouse scene. As soon as you walk into the greenhouse, you're greeted with the lunatic lattice effect right here on your right hand side. And we've got this cool piece. If you guys know, this is an old piece. Distortions has these cool stone angel monuments, and this is one of those. We've just taken the wings off of it and we kind of gave it a paint job and punched up some of the wrinkles and whatnot. But I love these pieces. These have been around for a while, and they're just good pieces. We have Flora that's watching you. And we have this little guy, I believe from Unit 70, if I'm not mistaken. Unit 70 or Midnight Studios, one of the two. But we put him in this little planter box, and there's a motor in there, and when it's on, it just wiggles him a little bit, because he's on a wireframe. It doesn't take a lot, but just that tiny little bit of movement, you know, brings the show to life. And then right here, that same actor that popped through the lattice, they're going to pop through this curtain and scare you. And when they do so, they have a button on the wall that they'll press, and right overhead there's a big loud speaker and a bright strobe light. We call that the EAE, electronic actor enhancement. So they'll get you at the lattice, then they'll pop out here and there'll be a loud noise and a bright flash of light. It's another cool piece from Distortions. Annie, I think it is. We call her Annie anyway. She screams and chews on her leg and moves her head around. And we put her on this cool floral cart, and we actually built her guts and stuff into that, so when we move stuff around, we can actually unplug that cart from the wall and just wheel it off with her on it. So that's kind of a mobile animatronic effect, so that's kind of cool. Okay, do you guys want to see one more scene?
Yeah!
Alright, I'll show you one more scene before we get out of here. Right around this corner is not just any other scene in the show. This is the finale. This is the granddaddy, biggest, baddest, coolest, craziest scene right at the end of the haunt. It's the exclamation point at the end of Dark Hour. And I'm going to show you guys an exclusive look at it. This has never been videoed. We've never shared this on our YouTube. So you're getting the exclusive look right now at the finale scene of Dark Hour Haunted House. It's right around this corner. Drum roll. This big black space really is the finale area for Dark Hour. This is what it looks like naked, so to speak. I know I've said we don't use black as scenery, and we really don't. This is the base layer. The finale actually changes every single show. We reserve this entire block of space right at the end of the maze so that we can build out a cool finale for whatever show that we do. So from season to season, from year to year, what happens in this space is different almost every single time. just between you and me, I think that this Halloween, we're gonna have the biggest, baddest, coolest, most high-tech, most mind-blowing, most special effects heavy, craziest finale scene that we've ever done. And you'll just have to come see it in person because I can't tell you what it is. That's the show, folks. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this behind the scenes tour of Dark Hour Haunted House. I really hope that you've enjoyed it. Be sure to like and subscribe for more haunt how-to videos in the future. And hopefully this Halloween season, you'll be able to come visit us here at Dark Hour in Plano, Texas, for what I'm sure will be our best Halloween season yet. You guys take care, and I will see you soon. Happy haunting.